Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis. This is our weekly show where we bring you all the latest updates and stories from the world's most volatile region. For weeks, we have been talking about an Islamic State resurgence in Iraq and Syria. In the latest, U.S. Special Forces conducted a counter-terrorism mission in northwest Syria, killing ISIS leader Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurashi. The American president says that he chose a raid instead of an airstrike to minimize civilian casualties. But while trying to capture al-Qurashi, the ISIS leader is said to have blown himself up, thus resulting in several fatalities. We bring you the stories.
The U.S. forces rehearsed the helicopter raid over and over, hoping to capture an Islamic State's leader on the third floor. He was holed up with his family in a residential building. But before they could capture him, Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurashi detonated a suicide bomb, triggering a large explosion, one that blew mangled bodies out of the building into the streets outside, signaling the resumption of America's war on terror.
Last night, operating on my orders, the United States military forces successfully removed a major terrorist threat to the world, the global leader of ISIS, known as Haji Abdullah. He took over as leader of ISIS in 2019 after the United States counterterrorism operation killed al-Baghdadi.
For the United States, this is a major victory. Firstly, because of the high-profile target, and secondly, because of the timing. Around 3 years back, the Islamic State lost their final enclave in Syria. But recently, there has been a resurgence. More recruitment and more attacks. On January 20th, ISIS terrorists attacked a prison in Syria. Inside were Islamic State detainees. The US-backed Kurdish forces were pressed into action. What followed was a 10-day standoff. The attack was a sign of the Islamic State's resurgence, something the Kurdish forces did point out. How many terrorists does the Islamic State have? Reports say between 8,000 and 16,000. Most intel reports hint at a resurgence, so the United States had to respond. This was the biggest U.S. operation in Syria since 2019. The last one also targeted the Islamic State's leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. When Baghdadi died, al-Qurashi took over.
Last night, the United States brought the world's #1 terrorist leader to justice. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead.
He had been leading ISIS since 2019. By taking him out, the US has contained the resurgence, for now. America is still assessing the civilian casualties from the raid. But the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says that 13 civilians were killed, including 4 children and 2 women. The target was a densely populated area called Atme, near the Turkish border. Here's how a local resident narrated the raid.
For more than 2.5 hours to 2 hours and 45 minutes, they were in the air. The planes were in the air, and we heard the sound of machine guns and airstrikes from helicopters, and you can see now how it is. There were more than 6 children, 2 women and 2 men were martyred in this raid and operation.
While it's mission accomplished for now, the US must also think about the long term. Even today, thousands of families of ISIS terrorists live in Syrian and Iraqi camps. Hundreds of terrorists are still in jail, but there's no due process, no trial, no prosecution. That's what the Kurdish fighters are calling for. In the last decade, the ISIS thrived on chaos and confusion. Even today, things aren't any better. The Iranian proxies attack US forces. Turkey attacks the Kurdish militants. Baghdad also has issues with the Kurds. ISIS thrives on this sort of confusion. Right now, their attacks are limited to sleeper cells. They do not have standing armies or weapons like last time, but that doesn't mean the fight is over. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Don't go anywhere. We have a lot more lined up for you in this edition of the West Asia Post. We're gonna go to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and to the Syrian refugee camps. But before that, let's take a look at what else is making the headlines across West Asia.
Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz is in Bahrain in the latest high-profile diplomatic trip since the country's normalized ties. Gantz is the first Israeli defense minister to ever officially visit the Gulf country. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan reaffirms his offer to host a Ukraine-Russia crisis summit, using a visit to Kiev to stress his support for Ukraine's territorial integrity. Turkey's inflation hits a two-decade high, near a whopping 50% in January, as a currency crisis decimated people's purchasing power and complicated President Erdogan's path to re-election. Erdogan says Turkey is ready to undertake infrastructure projects in Lebanon, including rebuilding the port of Beirut, in a joint press conference with Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati. The United States will deploy a guided missile destroyer and state-of-the-art fighter jets to help defend the United Arab Emirates after a series of missile attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels.
Just 4 years ago, Qatar was a regional outcast. It was dealing with a blockade and was ostracized by fellow Gulf nations. Now, Qatar is becoming a key United States ally, crucial for geopolitics in the region and beyond. So what charted Qatar's rise as an international player? Let's take a look.
This is Qatar, a small Gulf nation with a population of around 2.9 million. Once a small pearl diving enclave, it is now a Gulf metropolis. For years, Qatar is famous for punching above its weight diplomatically. But doing so has always come with risks. In 2017, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain and Egypt cut diplomatic ties with Qatar. They accused Doha of supporting terrorism and cozying up to enemy number one, Iran. The row ended in January 2021. The regional embargo could mean the end of Qatar, but the Gulf nation did not give in easily. Now it looks like its fortunes have turned. It will be the third Gulf country after Kuwait and Bahrain to be designated the title of major non-NATO ally.
Qatar is a good friend and reliable and capable partner, and I'm notifying Congress that I will designate Qatar as a major non-NATO ally to reflect the importance of our relationship. I think it's long overdue.
Qatar has often been accused of cozying up with adversaries. But the same policies that led to its ostracization have now catapulted Qatar's rise in geopolitics. In the Afghan crisis, the Gulf nation was the go-to country, brokering power deals while evacuating Afghans. Qatar positioned itself as the country everybody needs in a crisis. It played a key role in the rise of the Taliban. It was then helping the West with evacuation efforts. Contradictory in nature, but effective in policy. Doha's ties with Tehran also appear to have paid off. Currently, Iran and the US are at a crucial juncture. They are struggling to revive the 2015 nuclear deal. Qatar, meanwhile, seems to be engaging in shuttle diplomacy. Sheikh Tamim's visit to Washington comes just days after his top diplomat visited Tehran. Was he carrying a message for Biden? Only time will tell. But it is not just West Asia where Qatar is playing an outsized role. It has found its way in the Ukraine conflict as well. Qatar is offering to help with contingency planning in case a Russian invasion disrupts energy supplies in Europe.
And the Emir and I have a lot on our agenda today. We want to talk about the security in the Gulf and the broader Middle East, ensuring the stability of global energy supplies, continuing our work together to support the people of Afghanistan, and strengthening commercial and investment cooperation between our two countries.
Qatar's Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, is the first Gulf Arab leader to visit the Biden White House. It is a trip that highlights its unrelenting ambition. It wants to expand its geopolitical influence. Doha now wants to become a key international player. For years, its role as a cordial mediator has only strengthened Doha's position. The end result now is an empowered Qatar. One that brokered peace negotiations, helped the US with evacuation, and now may even come to Europe's rescue in a crisis. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
In a new report, Amnesty International accused Israel of apartheid, of maintaining a system of oppression and domination over Palestinians since 1948. Now, the Jewish state hits back at the report, calling it anti-Semitic. But it isn't the first organization that accused Israel of oppression and curbing of rights. We bring you the story.
What is an apartheid regime? By definition, it is one that systematically empowers and emboldens one ethnic group to the direct detriment of another. In the late 90s, it was used for South Africa to highlight the institutionalized racial segregation. Now, Amnesty and other groups have used it for Israel, accusing the Jewish state of benefiting from the oppression of the Arabs. It is a 250-page report that has taken the region by storm. Amnesty cites massive seizures of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings, drastic movement restrictions, and the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians. According to the report, all of these are components of a system which amounts to apartheid under international law.
This is not just one report. We are committing to do all we can within the remit of an international human rights organization such as ours, with our supporters, with our members, with our sections, to address and to put an end to the system and the crimes of apartheid committed by the Israeli authorities against the Palestinian people.
For many, the report has reignited the Israel-Palestine conflict. Palestinians have welcomed the report.
As Palestinians, we welcome the decision of Amnesty International to label Israel as an apartheid state. This decision is in the interest of the Palestinian people.
This is a very important report because it establishes the basis for demanding sanctions and divestments and boycott of this Israeli apartheid system.
As for Israelis, there are no guesses about the reaction. They have slammed the report, calling it ridiculous and a big lie. Foreign Minister Yair Lapid even went one step further, calling it delusional.
In the past, Amnesty was a respected organization. Not anymore. Today it is precisely the opposite. It isn't a human rights organization, but just another radical organization which echoes propaganda without seriously checking the facts. Instead of seeking the truth, Amnesty echoes the same lies shared by terrorist organizations.
A highlight of the report remains the forced evictions. Israel occupied East Jerusalem in 1967, later annexing it in a move not recognized by the world. Palestinians were driven out of their homes. Many of them found refuge in Sheikh Jarrah and other neighborhoods. But some of the land is said to have been owned by Jewish associations. Israelis argue that Sheikh Jarrah belonged to Jews in East Jerusalem before the 1948 war. Under Islamic law, Jewish groups can claim land that once belonged to Jews, even before the foundation of the State of Israel. Doesn't matter if Palestinian families have been living there for decades. Amnesty is not the first organization to accuse Israel of apartheid. But this time, the focus is not just on occupied territories. It is also on Arab citizens living in the country. Complicating the issue are the different experiences of Palestinians. As the Israeli-Palestinian conflict continues to rage on. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
2 children have died in Syria's refugee camps, including a 7-day-old baby. The recent freezing cold weather over the past 2 weeks has swept Idlib, home to more than 2 million displaced Syrians. This is now drawing attention to the dire humanitarian conditions in the region. We tell you more.
What do you do when your home can't protect you from chilling winds? Or the snow which is dripping from your roof? When your children are freezing from the cold? And the only shelter you have collapses. This is what snow in Syria looks like. And thousands here are struggling to stay warm. Meet Muhammad al-Hassan. He should have been rejoicing at the birth of his newborn. Instead, he is busy pushing dirt around her grave. Freezing temperatures in Syria's northwest led to her death.
My daughter died the day before yesterday at night, at around 1:30 after midnight. We took her to the hospital to see the doctor. She went in already dead, and her soul was already with God.
Fatima Muhammad was from the Al-Leth camp. At 7 days old, she was brought to the hospital with cold limbs, dilapidated pupils, and was unresponsive. But she wasn't the only one. The IBN Sina hospital is receiving an influx of children. Most of them are blue. They have a slow pulse and are mostly shivering.
Sickness rates are higher than previous years due to sub-zero temperatures and snowfall, given that there are displacement camps around the Idlib region. The hospital is trying as much as its capacity allows it to welcome patients.
These deaths are tragic, but they were avoidable. In Idlib, the living conditions are poor. 97% of the population lives in extreme poverty. And the tents are fragile, ready to collapse any minute. It is in these conditions that the displaced are battling a rare snowstorm. Freezing cold weather is sweeping the region, home to almost 2 million displaced Syrians.
We removed the snow from the tents to prevent them from collapsing again. The tent collapsed during the first storm, and we're afraid that it might fall again.
We have been trapped in the snow for 4 days. We have no shoes, we are soaked with water, the children are sick and walk barefoot. They have nothing.
Aid agencies help insulate tents and provide blankets, but donor funding is struggling to keep up with the demand. Millions of dollars are required for assistance, but funding is hard to come by. Fatima's death was untimely. So was that of others at the camp. From freezing temperatures to leaking tents. For millions of Syrian refugees, the war may have ended, but the trauma continues. They need humanitarian support. But what they need most is a lasting solution to the conflict. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
A restaurant in Saudi Arabia is offering patrons a unique experience. Dishes are served with a side of skulls and blood in the company of zombies and vampires. The restaurant caters to horror film buffs with strong stomachs, allowing them to savor their dishes. We bring you the story.
Skeletons on the walls. Trays lined with severed hands. Waiters with blood-stained cups. And dishes presented in skulls. These images of horror and the screams of terror may spoil your appetite. But for the brave hearts, this is the perfect experience. A restaurant attracting horror fans from across the globe.
The idea behind this restaurant, the horror and the horror-themed dishes, that is what attracted me. I love everything horror-related. Eating in a horror restaurant is something I really enjoy.
For patrons, it is a unique experience. Blood-stained dishes, all in the company of zombies and vampires. The restaurant caters to horror film buffs, all with strong stomachs. They are asked to savor their dishes, while staff in gory costumes put on interactive shows.
We trained those actors and worked on the style and everything related to the customers' entertainment and their experience of horror. And of course, there's food too.
This is a kingdom that has been trying to shed its conservative image. All part of the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's 2030 vision. For decades, Saudis had to travel to more entertaining cities, especially in Europe or West Asia. But authorities now hope to fuel more local tourism, all with a side of skulls and gore. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis from Under the Rain in Beirut, and you're watching WION World is One.